and welcome to the Broadway Bound podcast. Today we're going to be talking about everything rehearsals. We're going to be talking about what to bring, how to be prepared, some etiquette, and some terms that you should know when going into your first rehearsals. So, yeah, without further ado, let's just get going. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about is what you should bring to rehearsals, or what you should wear to rehearsals. Overall, as far as what you should wear to rehearsals, always wear something that you can move in, even if it's not necessarily a dance rehearsal. It's still always good to bring, stuff you can move in, such as leggings or, shorts. Just something that in case they want you to dance, you can, or, you can be flexible with whatever the director wants you to do that day. Also, always bring a jacket because, especially in the theater, when you get to the theater, it is always cold in the theater because they need to keep all the tech cold and, the actors from overheating on stage. But when you're waiting around, it'll be pretty cold. So always bring a jacket to make sure, you're not freezing. I've forgotten that many times and regretted it, so always do that. Another reason to bring a jacket is during tech week when you're wearing costumes, you want to put something over your costume when you eat so that you don't get food on your costume, because even if you try to be careful, somehow you will get food all over your costume, no matter how hard you try. But now what to pack in your rehearsal bag, or what you should bring to your rehearsals. Something that's always important is your script, obviously. Some people may not bring their script with them after you go off book and you're not using it anymore, but I find it's just always helpful to have, and to keep looking back on to see where you are in the show, or just to double check lines, because you may forget them. Even if you know them, even if you've known them for months, you may just forget them. That always happens. So always have it with you. Doesn't mean you'll use it, but it's always a useful resource to have. And also bring lots of stuff to mark up your scripts, including highlighters if you're allowed to. Some scripts don't let you highlight them because they're rentals. Others do. It depends on what licensing company the scripts are through, but they should tell you if you're allowed to highlight or not. If you can highlight, bring highlighters. Always bring pencils to write in. I take very detailed notes, and I'll kind of get to that later in a later section, but pencils are very needed for rehearsal. Tabs are something that, sticky little Post-it tabs, are something that I love, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, but it's a good thing to have if you want. I'll talk about that a little bit later. A phone charger and your phone. Obviously, you may not be on your phone while you're rehearsing, obviously, but it's always useful to have your phone to record things, and a lot of this I'll talk about later, but it's always useful to have your phone to record, or to take notes on, or to look back. Always useful to have your phone, and bring a phone charger, so you can use your phone, or odds are someone else will need a phone charger, so you can be there if you want to. And hair ties are something I always forget, so I always like to put it in my rehearsal bag. Hair is just so annoying for the actor and the director trying to see your facial expressions, so always have your hair out of your face, and so hair ties are a big one. And show shoes. So you may be wondering, what are show shoes? Show shoes are just, wow, that's a tongue twister. Show shoes. Show shoes are just like they sound. They're the shoes that you wear in the show. It's really important to practice with them in rehearsals, especially if they're new shoes. You need to break them in before the actual show. And it may feel completely different. Like, you may be wearing tennis shoes in rehearsal, and then on stage you wear boots, and it feels completely different and wrong. So if you can, especially if it's a dancey show, bring your dance shoes that you're going to be wearing in the show so that you can, get a feel for what it's going to feel like. And especially also if you have heels, like character shoes or heels, that's obviously going to impact how you move, and so always important to bring that. Also, sometimes if you're in a show where you have like big skirts or big costume pieces, they may want you to wear that during rehearsals so that you can get to know like the feeling of it. Usually that they will keep there at the rehearsal place. I don't think they would have you take that home, but always useful to wear that in rehearsal. So now we're going to go into talking about a little bit about the actual rehearsals. So starting with the first rehearsal, which is the reading, not all shows do this, but most of them do, where basically the first rehearsal, you just kind of sit down and you all read through the script. And I know some companies don't do this, especially in more professional companies, you don't usually have time, but in like a lot of youth theater, you will do this because it just helps you understand the story, and just because you may rehearse out of order, so you may not know what comes before what. So it's always useful to know just kind of where the story's going, a little bit about it. So you may or may not do a reading. All you're doing is literally reading the script, so you don't really need to prepare for that. If you do end up doing a reading, I think it's always a cool thing to really think about your character and what motivates them, and start thinking about that. And using actions like that. Just knowing about actions that they do later in the show can really help you understand the character. So now I'm going to talk about some music rehearsals. So obviously, if you're in a play, you're not really going to have music rehearsals. But basically, in typical music rehearsal, the music director will be on a piano, or the music director will have an accompanist on the piano, and you'll be separated into sections based on your voice, your vocal range. There's for guys or lower voices, there's usually tenor and bass, and then for higher voices, there's alto and soprano. And if you generally what this means is, so for higher voices, alto is the lower one and soprano is the higher one. And for lower voices, bass is the lowest one and tenor is slightly higher. So if you don't know your voice type, you can kind of guess based on that, or you can always go up to your music director and ask what voice type they think you are. So an important thing to do in music rehearsals, and kind of in general, is just to always record what happens in rehearsals, because you're gonna learn music and then you may not revisit it for like a couple weeks, right? So you want to have a recording to go back to and listen to your part and your harmonies. Even if you think you'll remember, I think it's always best practice to do it. So bring your phone to rehearsals. There's a rare occurrence where they won't let you bring your phone to rehearsal. I don't think that does not happen in professional theater or higher level theater. Some youth theater companies, they may not let you do that. So find a way to record it, or ask your music director if they can record it. But I would only ask them if you're not allowed to bring your phone. If you are allowed to bring your phone, then I would always record your parts so that you can listen back to it later. So while you're doing music rehearsals, what you're going to want to do is drill your harmonies. Now, this took some practice because harmonies at first seem really overwhelming, and like you just listen to something and you're like, whoa, that sounds crazy. I don't know if I can do that. Or I don't know if I can sing a different part while the person next to me is, singing a completely different thing from me. But the trick to harmonies is you got to really focus. And, everything comes with practice. And drill it. So when the music director is not going over your part, be repeatedly singing over that part over and over again so that it can really get ingrained in your brain and you'll remember it more. That's the biggest trick that I have learned, is just keep drilling it. Listen to it once, sing with it once, then try to sing without it, then repeat. Listen to it once, sing with it once, then try to do it without it, and then once you finally get it without it, just keep drilling. It'll become almost muscle memory so that you don't really have to think about it as much, and it'll be a little bit easier to sing it with the other parts. So, now I'm going to move on to dance rehearsals. So, dance rehearsals are usually pretty straightforward. You'll kind of get into lines to learn the dance usually first. I'm sorry about the motorcycle. And so you'll get into a few lines and you'll kind of stand in windows, which means that you'll stand in between two people in front of you so that you can be seen. And they'll just kind of the choreographer will usually do a quick warm-up. You just follow along with the people in front of you, and then they'll teach you the dance. Going back to what I said earlier, it's important to wear your dance shoes that you're going to wear in the show, so that you can break them in and get used to the feeling with them. It may be tricky because the floor in the theater is probably going to be different than the floor in your rehearsal room, but, you just got to deal with it, I guess. One of my biggest tricks for retaining choreography is to learn it in the front row. I know this may be scary, and it is kind of scary because, you're in the front. But what I've learned is that being in the front kind of forces you, or being near the front kind of forces you to learn it faster. And I just learn so much better, and I'm able to focus so much more when I'm in the front. This may not work for everyone, but that's a big tip for something to try if you're having trouble retaining choreography. So now I'm going to move on to blocking rehearsals. So blocking rehearsals, and first, I guess I can go over what is blocking. What does blocking mean? I mean, basically, blocking just means where you stand on the stage and where you move to on the stage. So, I think a basic thing to know when going into blocking rehearsals is stage directions. Some theater companies, they'll just assume that you know stage directions, so they won't tell it to you. So it's important to know that ahead of time. The main stage directions are upstage, downstage, stage right, and stage left. So upstage and downstage. Upstage would be, downstage would be towards the audience, and upstage would be away from the audience. The reason for that is because theaters the stage used to be slanted like this, so the audience is over here, used to be slanted upward. So, this is physically downstage and this is physically upstage. Obviously, stages aren't slanted anymore, but it's still used as a common stage term. And the other stage terms are stage right and stage left. So this is from the actor's point of view. So you are looking at the audience. Your right is stage right. Your left is stage left. Important to know. Sometimes directors, this is used rarely, but they'll say house right and house left. So the house is basically the audience. So if they're saying house right, that's going to be from the audience's perspective. So the audience is facing the stage. Their right is house right and their left is house left. Not a lot of directors tend to use that, or they'll use it rarely. Usually it's just for sets and stuff when they'll talk about that. But now if they ever mention that, now you know what it means. So, an important thing to know in blocking rehearsals, one thing that always my brain doesn't quite comprehend is what cross means. A cross is simply just a movement. So say you're upstage left, right? And they say cross downstage left. You're just going to move to downstage left. In my mind, for some reason, when I hear the word cross, I think you have to go diagonally across the stage, but that's not what it means. It just means to move from one place to another. It could be in a straight line. It doesn't have to be across the stage. It's just a cross is just a walk from, or a movement from one area to the other. My brain, I've been doing theater for years and I still can't comprehend that, so I don't know why, but yeah. So during blocking rehearsals, it is really crucial to take notes. Going back to what I said about the music rehearsals is, you're going to be coming back to this, you're going to be coming back to these blocking, weeks after you originally learned it. Most of the rehearsals is usually spent on the musical numbers, not necessarily the scenes until later. So you'll probably learn a scene a while before you're actually gonna, do it in front of people. So it's really important to take notes. I take super detailed notes, which is annoying in the moment, but it helps me so much later. Sometimes you can't take detailed notes while you're doing it, but on your break or something right after you finish the scene, then, or, the night after rehearsal, then I'll take the notes so it's still fresh in my mind and I can still write it down, because I usually don't have time to do it while I'm blocking. But yeah, so I just like to make notes about where I'm moving, who I'm next to, who I'm around, what the formation kind of looks like if we're in little clumps of people, or let's see. Oh yeah, tabbing. So this is, again, I said I was going to talk about this later, and now is the time. So tabbing. I honestly have kind of an obsession with tabs. It really makes a huge difference to me. So basically what I do is I take a sticky tab and I'll put a tab on every scene and song, maybe not in the whole show, maybe just the ones that I'm in, or the important ones. Sorry about that. And so that I can easily flip to it in rehearsals. So they may say, do act 1, scene 2, and you'll be like, okay, now you're gonna do act 2, scene 5. You're like, whoa, that's across the script, but then, I have tabs, so I can just flip to it right now. It just makes it so much easier on you, and especially during the show, if you're in the middle of the show or a run through and you need to know, oh shoot, what scene is next? I don't know. You can easily see everything and you can look up lines really quickly and stuff. It just helps so much, and I love it since I've been doing it. It also helps a lot of other people too, I found. A lot of people who don't have tabbed scripts, they're like, I can't find it, give me your script. So it's just, it really helps me, and hopefully it'll help you too. So, back to the blocking rehearsals. It is important when you're rehearsing scenes to play around. Try different tactics and ways to approach the line, ways to deliver the line. Don't be set in your ways. Try to keep going until you find something that feels right for the character. Don't be afraid to do that in rehearsals. That's what rehearsals are for. It's for you to play around and make mistakes, and the director may say, hey, I really like that, or hey, don't do that ever again. It also gives the director a chance to figure out what they want to see from the character as well as you. Next I'm going to talk about memorization when it comes to these scenes. A good unspoken rule of theater is that you should be memorized after you block a scene for the first time. So after you're told what to do in a scene, you should start memorizing. It doesn't mean you should be perfectly memorized, because usually the next rehearsal they'll be like, okay, we're going to use scripts, but like try not to look at your scripts. Or I was in a situation once where I didn't know this was an unspoken rule, and then they said, hey, we're going to run through the show without scripts. And I'm like, I didn't memorize my lines, because no one told me that. So I'm glad I'm telling you this now, so you don't have to be like me and be there during rehearsal being like, line. And I'll talk about calling for line in a second. But yeah, so start memorizing. Doesn't have to be perfect, but start memorizing as soon as you're done blocking a scene. Now, tricks for memorizing. I've been doing this for a while, so I find that the easiest way to memorize is to just try to do the scene without looking at it, and then be like, shoot, what's my line? Look at it, and then don't keep reading it over and over again. Try to remember. Really try to remember, and you can have your script right there, but then you'll just like look down for a second, and be like, oh, that's the line, and then keep going while you're rehearsing. And what also helps to kind of get it in my brain is to like read it right before I go to bed. I find that really helps me retain information and stuff. So that really helps me memorize it quickly. Those are my main tips. Memorization is kind of just a thing that you kind of just feel how to do it, but you kind of just got to go for it. So yeah. Yes, so now I'm going to talk about calling for line. So when your director says, hey, we're going to be off book, that means that you're not going to use your script. You're going to do it memorized. Now, usually the first few times that you do it, first couple times that you do it, they're not expecting you to be perfectly memorized, because this is the first time you're doing it without a script. So what happens if you forget a line? Because you probably will forget a line. You call line. You just say the word line. So say I'm in a conversation, I'm just like, oh, I forgot my line. Line. Don't say I forgot my line. Just pause the scene, say line, someone will read you your line, and then you'll just continue on with the scene. And it's just like that. So the biggest thing not to do in rehearsals is when you mess up a line, don't break character and be like, I forgot the line. What is it? Just call line and continue with the scene. Once you get closer to the show, try not to call line. If you know that you I don't know where I was going with that thought, but as you get closer to the show, try not to call for line. Just try to improvise your way out of it. I know that's way easier said than done. I highly recommend joining an improv team at your school, or taking improv classes, because I've just improved so much after being on my school's improv team. I'm just so much more comfortable on stage and with improv and stuff like that. Something that really helps with improv is understanding the scene. You got to know where the scene is going, where it starts, where it's going, kind of the major things that happen in that scene, so that if you forget a line, you kind of know the direction to go to. Just know the scenes, basically. Just know where they go. Don't just have your lines memorized. Know actually what's going on. Now we're going to go into tech rehearsals. So tech rehearsals are the best and worst part of theater. This is usually the week before the show or the week of the show, where you're in the theater for the first time. Everything is moving in. You're working with sets, props, costumes. I mean, you may have had the props beforehand, or you may not. But and the lighting and the sound and all of this stuff is being added all at once, which I don't know whose idea that was, but you have to be ready that so much chaos is going to go on. You have to be patient is kind of the main thing. Be patient because everyone is on edge. Usually, also an important thing to keep in mind is that the tech crew, so you've been rehearsing for months, right? And the tech crew has a week to learn a show that you've been rehearsing for months, right? So, always, be patient of them, be very appreciative to them, compliment them, be nice to them, they are doing so much, and, they really make the show. Lighting is one of my favorite parts of theater. I just think it brings the whole show to life. You can have sets, you can have everything, but without the lighting, it's just anyway. I love lighting, so I love tech people because they bring theater to life for me. So yeah, be patient with everyone. A lot of people are on edge, and you gotta just keep going. You gotta make sure to focus on what's going on. You don't want to mess around. It's hard to not mess around because obviously theater is fun, and you can after a certain point, but after especially the first few days, you can't really mess around. You just kind of have to be there. You have to wait for things to happen. You have to be patient for the tech people who are learning the show, and you can't really afford to mess around or waste time. Also, bring stuff to do in the downtime. It depends on what show you're in, depends on what character you're playing, and how much they have to do with the show. I've been in shows where I've been needed the entire time and I haven't had a break, and I've also had shows where I've been needed barely any of the time and I was just sitting there. So it's always a good idea to bring stuff to do in the downtime if you're in school, homework, because you're using all this time up at tech and you don't have time to do your homework at home, really. So bring that to work on in the spare time. That's some of my regrets, is not bringing stuff to do. But also you want to have fun too, so it's hard to do work, but also, you need sleep because you're working so hard, and if you can get your homework done while you're there at tech, that helps so much. So, yeah. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover in all about rehearsals. Actually, no, there's something else I want to include. I want to talk a little bit about, I forgot to put this on my outline, but I want to talk a little bit about what happens at a tech rehearsal. So basically, it's pretty straightforward. You kind of, all the technical elements are obviously there, and usually you'll start out by restaging the show, making sure that everything fits on the stage, because sometimes your rehearsal, actually most of the time, your rehearsal space is not the same size as the stage, and you'll be completely confused. And you also have to work with the lights and how they can move. I know in one of the shows that I did, the lights could only move so far, so they had to switch around a lot of blocking. So again, that's another place where you should be patient and very understanding. So, but once you're done with the staging and reblocking, then you're finally gonna start doing run-throughs, and the show will slowly come together before the performances. But now that is all that I wanted to talk about in today's episode of Everything Rehearsals. I hope this was really helpful for you, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Okay, see you around. Bye.